Hello everybody, welcome to Letters from Jen. We are starting a brand new series today and it's called Rebuke the Wind. I really think it's going to encourage you. When you feel like you're suddenly thrust into the front line of battle, or you're facing a storm of life that came up on you so suddenly you didn't even see where it came from, it's quite easy to be thrown off balance. In fact, in moments like these, it can actually feel like your whole world has been turned upside down and you are completely losing control. Well, this is the exact time when we really need somebody to stand up, take authority over the situation, and just make it all stop. Now, we know that Jesus' disciples faced a time like this when they were on board a fishing boat in the Sea of Galilee. They were actually en route to a region that was notorious for harboring a demonized man who was possessed by a legion of demons. Now, Jesus knew that his mission was to get to the other side of that sea, to deal with those demons that were oppressing this man, and to see that man set free and made whole. You see, for far too long, the devil held the people in that area hostage with fear. The entire coastland knew about this dangerous madman who would rant and rave and live like a tormented animal amongst the caves. Now, nobody deserves to live that way, and Jesus had set out to do exactly what his Father wanted him to do, to destroy the devil's work and to bring freedom and dignity to those who are bound in suffering. That's what it says in 1 John 3 verse 8. The reason the Son of God was made manifest and visible amongst us was to undo, to destroy, to loosen, and to dissolve the works the devil has done. That's what it says in the Amplified Classic Version. Now, the devil knew that if Jesus did cross that sea that night, and when he reached the other side, he was going to get to business and cast those demons right out and end the reign of terror that the devil had over that area. So, as Jesus and the disciples were crossing over the sea, the Bible says a great, violent, and destructive wind seemed to come up from nowhere. In Mark 4 verse 37 it says, "And a furious storm of wind of hurricane proportions arose, and the waves kept beating into that boat so that it was already becoming filled." Now, it's really important to note that the word arose that was used here in the original Greek text actually describes something that happens unexpectedly or even catches you off guard. So obviously, the disciples, who were skilled fishermen, didn't even expect this kind of ferocious windstorm that night. The event took them completely by surprise. Now, of course, I took full advantage of using my Sparkling Gems from the Greek by Rick Renner to help bring out the richness of the text and give us a very clear and detailed picture of what took place that night. Now, when we begin to dig a little deeper using this knowledge of the Greek, it actually opens up such a wonderful truth for us to hold onto and learn from. Now, let's get back to the storm. The Bible explains how the wind that came up that night was no ordinary wind. One translation actually literally says that it picked up the waves and threw them against the boat. Now, the Greek translation uses the words ballo, which means to throw, and epi, which means against. So it describes how this invisible force continuously hurled giant angry waves up and against that boat, beating against it continuously, one after the other, filling the boat until it actually began to sink into those ferocious, terrifying black waves. Now, no wonder the disciples were frightened out of their wits. No wonder they shook Jesus awake and in their panicked terror asked him why he didn't even care that they were perishing. Now, in the Greek, the word perish actually describes being undone, unraveled, or broken in pieces. That's a pretty accurate description of these terrified men. Now, we can certainly understand their confusion. They were doing nothing wrong. In fact, they were doing exactly what Jesus had instructed them to do. They were on a good, God-inspired mission with the Son of God in their boat, no less. In fact, they were almost there, and suddenly, out of nowhere, this ferocious wind just launched an all-out attack on them, manipulating the sea to rage in its fury against them. They were helpless against its power. The boat was filling up and they were about to drown. That's simply what was happening. And where was Jesus in all of this? Well, he was peacefully sleeping through it all. Now, if you ever find yourself in a situation where out of nowhere you are confronted with trouble of such great proportion that you simply don't know how to respond, understand that the source of your problem is more than likely not what you see or hear in the natural. You have an enemy, and the devil could very well be manipulating circumstances around you to distract you from what God is about to do through you. So he will do his best to unravel your emotions and cripple your faith. Now, just like the devil orchestrated the unseen force of the wind that night to manipulate the waves and actually prevent Jesus from accomplishing his purpose, the devil is constantly lurking behind the scenes trying to catch us off guard and prevent us from living out our faith for the Lord. Now, I want to remind you of what Ephesians 6 verse 12 says. For we are not wrestling with flesh and blood and contending only with physical opponents, but against the powers, against the master spirits who are the world rulers of this present darkness, and against the spirit forces of wickedness in the heavenly sphere. Wow, that's pretty powerful, right? But the good news is Christ in us has already overcome the enemy that's against us. And he's given us the authority to rebuke him and bring his evil plans to nothing. Now, in this series, we are actually going to come to understand how the fight that we are in is not against natural things, and that God has already given us the victory over it. We're going to learn how to stand up and use our voice and God-given authority to stop the devil in his tracks and see the whole situation we're facing turn around for God's glory. Now, in the next letter, we're going to see exactly how Jesus responded to the enemy's attack and how the circumstances immediately changed as a result. Until then, God bless you and goodbye.